All right, let's jump right into it. Welcome to today's explainer. Today, we're looking at a source text that presents a completely fascinating and honestly a pretty paradigm-shifting argument about what is actually driving our modern world. I mean, if you've ever looked around and thought, man, how do we have all these mind-blowing cutting-edge gadgets, but we still can't solve basic human problems? Well, you're in the right place, because we're going to connect those dots using the exact framework laid out in our source material. Necessity is the mother of invention. We've all heard that proverb a million times, right? It's practically hardwired into us. But I want you to really think about it for a second. According to our text, this famous saying actually represents a traditional narrative, or really a myth about how human progress happens. The old school idea is that when humanity has a deep, organic need for something just to survive, we naturally step up and invent a solution for it. But our source argues that this whole concept, it's fundamentally outdated. Instead, the text hits us with a major reality check. Capital is the mother of invention. It's a really stark contrast. The author's point is that for a long time now, necessity hasn't actually been the thing driving innovation. The real engine, the true force deciding what gets built and what gets totally ignored, is capital. Simply put, financial investment is what dictates the future of invention. And that brings us to the core friction the author highlights. On one hand, we've got what society genuinely needs to function. But on the other hand, we have what yields the highest financial return. The text's main argument here is that capital literally does not ask what humans organically need to flourish. It doesn't look at human suffering and naturally pivot to fix it. Instead, it strictly, ruthlessly pursues the highest return on investment. This one fundamental shift in motivation is what the author uses to explain the entire landscape of our modern world. So, how does this actually play out for us every day? It leads to what the text calls manufactured need. The argument is that our modern economy isn't really set up to solve organic problems anymore. It's set up to curate desires. Corporations are spending absolute billions, not to meet your basic human needs, but to totally reshape them. Their goal is to literally manufacture a need out of thin air. They want to convince you that the latest algorithmic novelty or that brand new subscription service is absolutely indispensable. They create the desire, and then they package it and market it right back to us as our destiny. Now, this dynamic balloons into a massive macro-level problem. Think about things like affordable healthcare, clean water, or sustainable infrastructure. According to the source, these are the crises that truly define the human experience. Yet, they are just languishing. Why? Well, while trivial conveniences get endless rounds of funding, these massive systemic issues stay technologically stagnant. The text points out that this happens for one simple reason: they just don't promise the massive profit margins that investors demand. The author backs this up with some incredibly specific examples, too. Take the pharmaceutical industry. Theoretically, this is an industry built entirely around addressing human necessity and health. But the text notes that pharma companies actually spend way more money on marketing than they do on actual research and development. It's a pretty stark dynamic, and the author uses it to perfectly illustrate their thesis. The pursuit of capital is moving way faster than the pursuit of the cure. Let's look at another striking juxtaposition from the source material. We have this absolutely massive ecosystem of photo sharing apps compared to the state of water purification technologies. I really want you to let that sink in for a moment. Just think about the sheer speed at which Silicon Valley produces, funds, and fine-tunes trivial social media apps. Now compare that to how vital water purification tech is just crawling forward at a fraction of that pace. The text highlights this to show how our brightest minds and our deepest pockets are being funneled into digital conveniences rather than actual existential human survival. Or consider this final, super jarring macroeconomic contrast. Billions of dollars are constantly flowing into optimizing ad targeting algorithms, while millions of people globally still don't even have access to basic sanitation. The author is methodically building a case here about the underlying mechanics of our global economy. The takeaway? Investment follows profit. It doesn't follow human dignity. Which leads right into the author's ultimate conclusion on this macro-level analysis. The text states, these aren't market failures. They're the market functioning with perfect internal logic. This is absolutely crucial. The text is arguing that we shouldn't look at the lack of clean water or affordable healthcare as some kind of glitch in a broken system. No, from the perspective of capital, the system is executing its own rules flawlessly. It is prioritizing return on investment exactly the way it was designed to. Now, this is where the source text makes a really fascinating pivot, and I want to turn this directly over to you. We're shifting gears from global economics down to personal psychology. The text introduces this concept called the illusion of immunity. Basically, it's the dangerous lie we tell ourselves that our principles are totally fixed, that we're objectively ethical, and that financial comfort couldn't possibly compromise us. We all kind of like to think we're the exception to the rule, right? But the author challenges this idea of moral immunity head-on. So how exactly does this financial influence creep into our lives? Well, the author points out it rarely shows up as some dramatic movie villain bribe. Instead, it starts at step 1, a reasonable compromise. Something small that totally makes sense at the time. Then you move to step 2, a softened boundary. Suddenly, a hard rule you used to have for yourself becomes just a little bit more flexible. And that leads to step 3, a lifestyle upgrade. You get used to a new level of comfort, and without you even noticing, that comfort quietly rewrites your tolerance for risk and dissent. Influence doesn't break the door down. It seeps in. This is such a powerful metaphor from the text, and we really need to unpack it with the caution the author intended. It's never a sudden ambush on your values. It works through the slow, quiet erosion of the discomfort that used to keep you honest. It's all those incremental rationalizations we make day after day. The author is warning us that this slow seepage is exactly how our moral compass gets completely recalibrated, all while we think the needle hasn't moved an inch. And that brings us to the ultimate consequence of this lifestyle creep. By the time a major moral test finally appears in your life, the answer has already been shaped. The text argues that those daily micro-compromises, those little softened boundaries and lifestyle upgrades, they've actually predetermined your actions. You might think you're making a completely free choice in a moment of crisis, but the groundwork for that decision, it was laid weeks, months, or even years ago by your gradual acceptance of comfort. Now, if you're sitting there thinking this all sounds incredibly bleak, stick with me because the source material addresses that directly. Acknowledging this isn't cynicism, it's clarity. The text takes a firm stance here, admitting that capital shapes not just our society, but our most deeply held personal beliefs is a necessary realization. Why does it matter so much? Because you literally cannot resist a force if you refuse to admit it's acting on you. Finding that clarity, rather than choosing willful ignorance, is the absolute required first step. So, what do we actually do about all this? Well, the source offers a 2-step process for personal resistance against this overwhelming systemic force. Step 1, like we just talked about, is recognition of the influence, just admitting that it is there. Step 2 is the active, everyday practice of refusing to let comfort purchase your conscience. It's about consciously drawing a hard line in the sand, deciding exactly where your lifestyle upgrades have to stop and where your core principles absolutely must begin. Which leaves us with this final question to really chew on. Where is comfort quietly purchasing your conscience? It's a super provocative, deeply memorable thought from today's text. I want to invite you to just take a moment to pause, reflect on your own life, your own compromises, and the environment around you. I really hope this explainer of the source material has sparked your curiosity to dive even deeper into these ideas. Thanks for exploring this with me today. Keep learning and keep questioning.